Hello and welcome. It is Halloween, Samhain. It's the month of witches and spirits. So, being women, talking about women's empowerment, women's struggles, healing, we could not miss this opportunity to go all a little bit witchy. And and I've been so excited about this. I cannot tell you how excited. How are you feeling, Karen?
Oh, I've got a lot of energy in my heart. There's all this heart fire coming up, and it's as soon as you started to, as soon as you went into the topic, my heart went, I'm here, and it's like I'm actually starting to get quite sweaty, which means there's excitement here as well. But it's like it's coming up from the heart, and then I'm a bit tingly as well, and also I've got something in my throat. So there's something here in my throat, which is, this kind of, it feels like a suppression piece as well. So interesting as I connect to the heart, the throat starts to shut down.
Ah, well, this is exactly the witch wound that we're going to be talking about. And so, as we go on this exploration of all things witchy and the witch wound, um, I just wanted to just say really honestly what I interpret the witch wound as being, because I had quite a journey reclaiming my voice, coming out of the shadows, feeling okay with being seen. And that is essentially what the witch wound is. It's this generational, cultural, spiritual wound that we've been carrying for generations, taking it right the way back to, the dark ages, those witch trials, the witch hunts, where actually it was really unsafe for women to gather, to do anything that may be interpreted as the dark spirits. And yeah, it dimmed our light, it kept us separate. Um, it meant that we lost that our voices, which sometimes it feels really hard to speak out loud. And we are the Say It Sister podcast after all. And it's about reclaiming. So healing all of those wounds, understanding where those wounds came from, and empowering ourselves to say, hey, I have a voice. I don't want to be hidden anymore. I want to claim my space at this time in this world.
Oh, sometimes it's like that need to just hold silence for a minute that I get. It's like claiming my space in this world right here, right now. And, when I was looking into it, I remember like my mum used to talk to me about this a little bit when I was younger. And, there was some really bad like witch trials that happened near where I grew up in Manchester, in Pendle and Lancaster as well, which is not near me, but we would talk about it and we would talk about it. And it was kind of in some ways, it probably was around Halloween when these stories tend to come out and people tend to talk about them. And, I think as children, we have this obsession with witches, don't we? And it's a magical time. And I have a daughter who was born on Halloween, and I've called her a witch from being a baby. And people have said to me, don't call, like certain people, don't call her a witch, don't call her a witch. And I'm like, well, she is. She's like, the veil is thinner on Halloween. And, there's a lot around us that we can't see that is, part of our ecosystem of the world, of the universe that comes through. Just because we can't see it, it's definitely there. And so she's very, very in tune with so many different things. And she will, as a kid, she would see things and tell me. And, if there's anything coming through the house, because, I'm not going to say it's witches, but like energetic entities or things that are just, hard to put it into words, even dark matter in a way, Catalina would pick up on it. And I was always cleansing the house in the early days because she was like a sign, and, that something was off in the house. And so the sage would come out, and I've got the crystals, and, I would do all my cleansing rituals for the house, and just to keep the space nice and clean for us. It was quite amazing. She would point in the corner of the room and, let me know that there was something there. And that was from being quite small. And so there is something that is going on that is, outside our vision that we can't quite see, but yet we know there's something there. And it's that magical, that not all of it is good. But when I think about witches, I think about something that is a white witch, that is helpful, that is connecting to nature and medicine and herbs and that kind of thing, where we can work with the land and actually, help our bodies and help each other to heal and come together, like you said. And so that's where it takes me. It takes me back into this much more, shamanic or medicine based, ritual based, but again, I think as women, we're always seeking the right language, the right words to use when we think about witches, because it's so embedded with the negative, the dark forces, something that's scary, the hags, the crones, the toothless women.
Well, isn't that every story that's ever been written? The dangers out there have always been manifested. If it was a male energy, it'd always be in a beast. Whereas if it was a female energy, it would always be a wicked witch or a bad fairy. So it's been our whole storyhood that we've had these, foreboding messages. And the whole white witch thing has pretty much been eradicated from history. And I too had a very strange upbringing, because it was actually on my father's line where there was a lot of ghostly and spiritual experiences through, the energy in his home, different experiences that we had, visions that my half brother and sister had when they were very small. And so it was always there. But then there was on the other side, my mother's line, which was, don't be ridiculous, we don't talk about this stuff. And it was almost like, just shut it down. But interestingly, as I've started to really learn about the world of witches and reconnect myself back to that energy, I grew up in Herefordshire, in a really small rural town. And it was all farming, and it was all about the seasons. It was all about nature. And there were many practices that actually we did, which I didn't know were back in our old pagan roots, but were still very much in our community. So every September we have a folk festival where the dancers turn up with all of these ancient costumes. We used to make corn dollies, which of course were usually totems in some way or another. We always had our harvest festivals, which were about celebration. And May Day, we still obviously have bank holiday around that time, but it was very much a time of that ancient world where we were aligned with the spirits and the seasons and the full moons. And so when I started realizing this, I was like, oh, I've always been a witch, or I've always had this energy. And I remember the first time I had an intuition, and it actually kept me really safe. And I think I'd have been about 14 years old. And I heard these girls talking in a cubicle next to me, talking about how they were going to beat this girl up and she was having it, and et cetera, et cetera. And I just my whole body went into high alert. And I was like, there was this voice that just came, they're talking about you. And these were like friends in my class at school. I had no beef with them. There was no issue. But for some reason, I just knew. And I came out of the toilets, and my older male cousin was there, and he was like, "Are you all right, Lucy?" I was like, "You need to walk me home." And as we walked out of the building, the two girls came out, and they were like, "There she is." And it was just like, wow, what was that? And since then, I've always had little moments of, well, no, big moments of intuition, but also those really subtle ones, listening to my inner voice. But also, I just seem to have coincidences everywhere. All of these little fortuitous, serendipitous moments, they're everywhere. And so, me coming back into I call it witchiness, but actually, it's just my divine feminine. It's my feminine energy. It's also going back into my basic ancestral, how they used to live. I've been collecting conkers. I've been, collecting my lavender and drying it out, getting my essential oils out. It was all these really old things that just make me feel comforted. So yeah, I think I was probably a green witch or a herb witch or a wood witch. It's
Yeah.
that energy that I get.
Well, firstly, I want to say sorry about the situation with the toilets, because I've had situations like that too, and it stops you in your tracks, and it's just deeply, deeply distressing, and at the same time, something kept you safe. And it's that, when we listen in, we know that we've got wisdom, and when we trust that wisdom and we get support, then it can help in big ways, multiple different ways. And so it's that kind of coming back into the body. And, as you're talking about the herbalist thing, I had a past life experience where, I went in and I was regressed, and I went back to a lifetime, many years ago, many lives ago, where I was a herbalist, and I worked my husband, which was actually Rich, my current husband, because I looked into his eyes and I was like, the eyes are the same. And he was working the land. So he was ploughing the land, and I was, looking after two children and working with the herbs, and, but it was it was in secret. So it still wasn't safe for women to do that. And so in this regression vision that I had, people were coming along and sort of like saying, have you got anything for this? Have you got anything for that? And I would make up like little potions, and, I'm going to call it a potion, but it's really just a tincture. We call it a tincture today. And then they would go away. And in that life, I didn't live my life purpose. I didn't live my soul purpose, which was to heal. I did bits and pieces, but it was very much like in hiding, in secret. It's not safe. And that fear was part of my, anatomy in my body. And I've realized that story, that experience is linked into this life. Because when I started to work in the field of the Akashic Records, which is really, channeling and sourcing information, good energies, linking to unconditional love, and this field of, the divine, really, it's kind of like it covers everything. When I started to work in that field, and I started to, if you think of the word sorcery, I started to source things, visions, then that basically meant that I was able to go back and actually, see different things and realize that in this life, I'm actually getting to live it. I'm actually, in my power in a way, and I'm able to do work with women that is deeply healing, helps them to, as this podcast is, listen and find their voice and show the world what they're here to do. And in doing so, there is a level of healing that heals them, but also heals past generations in their family line and future generations. And so it just gives me huge pleasure it's sad to know that I didn't do it that time round. But when we look at what was going on for women in the witch trials and the association that still lives on, my mum will say, don't call her a witch. I'm like, Mum, it doesn't mean what you think it means. There's so much more to it. And when I explain it to her, she gets it, and it's a whole different thing. That this is really powerful and really important for women to be able to say, hold on a minute, who am I really deep inside? Like, what were my ancestors going through? And what can I heal today in a way that takes me forward and takes us all forward? Yeah. What's your take on that one?
It's interesting because as you were talking about your past, and that your past self, that past life, obviously had to hide. It was the whole women's experience, that anything that you were doing that might have caused any kind of alarm or concern or show any power or anything a little bit spiritual would have, put you to your death or be shunned from your community. And I actually had as part of my Akashic records, I also had a reconnection to an old version of myself, and I wasn't killed, but I was rejected from my town and had to go on the path alone, and it wasn't safe. And I don't know what I was doing, but there was something there because of my power. I'd said something and it got me rejected. And equally, can you imagine if I'd have come out of that, as that 14-year-old girl and said, I knew you were going to beat me up because my intuition told me. I'd have been laughed at, bullied probably for that. So it's still not safe for us to talk about our spirituality. And, there's you and I are professional businesswomen.
Yeah.
And we are still very spiritual creatures. We can be both, but in a world that only values logic and what is seen and what can be tested and can be evidenced, that whole other part, and for the last 400 or 500 years, that whole other part of existence has been ignored. And it takes me back to, I was listening to a brilliant documentary on BBC Sounds called Witch, and I recommend anybody go and have a look at it because it's all the stories, but there's evidence and there's research. But it introduced the idea of the word gossip and how demonizing that was, and it being a negative word put on women, that we just gossip. But actually, the original word gossip was there for these women who were healers, medicine women, accessing like the spiritual realm, who would actually accompany women in childbirth and at baptisms. And I guess we'd call them midwives, in that role that they took. But because these women were coming together and, dancing in the moonlight and, celebrating the different seasons, and um, that they were demonized. It actually became outlawed, but women, a little bit like what's happening in the Middle East now, but for women to be out in public talking, it became against the law in the 16th century, which is just terrifying. And then you can start seeing how things started to unravel, that, women were blamed for harvest failing. If there was adultery, it was always the woman's fault because she was the temptress. It was never the man's fault because she put a spell on him. It must have been a love potion. And then these things like, women would be crucified for being putting a hex on somebody, but it might have just been that we'd have muttered something under our breath in annoyance, and then the person fell over and, oh, therefore she's hexed him. And so all of these stories came out that actually then meant that women started turning in on each other, because and centuries later, well, here we are again, and still losing our voices and still having to hide, because any woman that comes out and says stuff or reclaims it, well, they're wailing, they're neurotic, they can't be trusted. And I even look at the stuff that was pointed to, like Greta Thunberg, when she came out and said, no, I don't want this. And the vilification that she had was horrendous. So yeah, it's a whole wound that is just actually the waters in which we swim in. But there is hope, because of social media. Women are finding their voices again, whether it's in blogs or whether it's on TikTok, Instagram. You go to Witch Talk or Instagram Witch Talk or whatever they call it. It's everywhere, and it's bringing us together. And you've named yourself a witch. I've named myself a witch. We are just completely normal human beings, but we're claiming it.
100%. And I do this work in big corporates with very high profile women, who will say to me, can you please work with this member of my team as well? And please make sure you do the Akashic records, because she really needs this sort of spiritual context of what's going on for her in her life. And I think it will really help her. And I'm always a little bit cautious, because I never want to assume anything. So, when I start to do work with women, we start with coaching. We go into the areas that are more commonplace, and then I tend to sort of offer and build, and it goes from there. But I do have women saying no, go straight in, with the Akashic records. And it's like, okay. And I'll always obviously check with the person I'm working with, and they'll be like, no, I'm up for it, please let's do that. So it's wonderful, because it's sorcery at its absolute most joyous and peak. And the idea of hexes, well, I spend a lot of time clearing out other people's energy from my personal space every day. I do it every morning and every night before I go to bed. So, there are people out there who are not happy in the world, that are, thinking negative things towards you, or if somebody's, road raged you or something like that in the car, it's called, we get these cords that get built up around us that come from other people, and there could be cords from all our relationships, and even the people who we love, because it's all of these things that get built up over our life that we carry it inside, but then things get attached to us. And so releasing all of that's really important. Otherwise, we're losing our power. And also we've got other people, attached to us, and they don't mean to necessarily do it deliberately. It's not an intentional thing, but if someone's got a bad intention towards you, you can guarantee that their energy is around you somehow. So all of that clearing out is vital, because otherwise we're probably working at, 50% of our true strength and power. And you know what it's like when you've had a bad spate of events, and how you start to get very low, and then you start to feel quite drained. That's basically what's going on. So being able to just take care of that and just send it away from you and get back into your power, that's not hurting anyone, but certainly by taking care of ourselves, and we are more able to take care of others, we're more able to do important work that we're here to do. And I would say, like, live our soul's purpose, or our life purpose, if you want to give it, whether you believe in past lives or not. we've still got a purpose in this life. So whatever, I'm very careful when I work with people to get their belief system in place from that person, and to say, you know, what are your words? Do you like the word love? What do you use? And we create, you know, we create the work based on the words that they like, because it's, you know, language is language can be a real like opener, but it can also close people down. And if you think about how religion has treated women and how it still treats women, you know, you've got to be very, very, I'm very, very careful about the navigation of the journey plans and what a woman might need from me, so that it opens up space, not closes things down for her, so that it's her language. But the work is the work, and it lives and breathes its own joy and love. And my aim is to release anything that is negative, so that that woman can get back into her power, get back into her heart, and be in the world, you know, showing up fully. And from there, great things always happen. I have never seen it not happen. So I know this stuff works, and you know it works.
And it is kind of incredible how a lot of modern therapy practices actually do go right back to some of those witchy practices. And so, for example, something that a therapist might ask you to do is to write a letter to the person who has vexed you, hurt you, traumatized you, and then just rip it up or burn it.
Yeah.
And that is essentially a cutting the cord kind of spell work. Another one that you can do is just light 2 candles. And if you haven't got all day, just have birthday candles and go in between them. And actually, with intentionality, think about that person and what you want to let go and protect yourself. And then when you're ready, just walk through the 2 candles. You can have a double-ended candle. So you take the wax off the other end and just let it burn. And when it's done, it's released. And burning the messages of what you want to let go of into a bonfire, or even just a little cauldron, dare I say it, but something that'll hold that is just so powerful. And the word really is about intentionality. And you can practice letting go or protecting yourself however you wish. You don't need to cast salt circles and manifest everything. You know, we wouldn't get much done if we were doing that all day. Exactly. But sometimes it's fun, you know, the big full moons or the big events, to do something really symbolic. But actually you can do stuff every day. And even if you just imagine a circle of protection around you, and you can like almost build it with your mind's eye and just say, I feel protected. That is essentially what historically was just a simple spell. The cloak that we wear, sometimes we might want to put loads of clothes on and put a big scarf on, and when we do, we just feel really warm and protected. Well, again, the witch's cloak was essentially that. It was seen as a way to protect ourselves as we went around in the world. So a lot of the stuff that we are probably doing, whether it's manifesting, whether it's visualizing, whether it's actually casting a spell, making a wish, saying a prayer, actually, it is witchery. And just name it. And I have protection spells all over my house. I've even got Hegarty's wheel, which is actually inked onto my skin, just as a way to remember that I am protected, because it is a state of intentionality and letting go. You know, whenever I need to do it, I just wish it out there. I let you go. I let it go. I cut the cords. What practices do you have?
Oh my gosh, I have so many different practices, but I have my, you know, my morning ritual and my evening ritual, which are the 2 staples that I just do not miss, and they really help me. But then I have like, there's so many different Akashic records, prayers that I use, that just, you know, it's about me being in full command of myself and coming back into that space. Oh, I mean, I have a book basically of like rituals and practices, and you know, I think if you say this is my practice, it sounds much more safe. But if you say this is a ritual, but I think people are getting really on board with rituals. And you know, I even wrote a rituals guide for women, because I just thought there's so many small little things that we can do when we're out and about on the move, that you think, oh, I need to create all this space and time. Actually, you don't. You can do, and it's a beautiful thing to do, especially if you come together with others. How wonderful is that? And yet at the same time, you can make this part of your daily life in a way that will just help you to feel more empowered, more connected. You know, I brought this book with me. This is like the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. It's absolutely incredible. And again, I'll put that on the Facebook page, but it's got all of these, like, you know, plants and what they do. And there is literally every single thing is in here that you might possibly need. So for me, I'm just fascinated by the foods we eat. I'm really getting into that, like foods that are anti-inflammatory, foods that are good for perimenopause and menopause, you know, the different stages that women go through, and also the foods that are really, really like warming soups during our periods. And, you know, they're very really simple things. It's really a diet and nutrition thing. It's not woo in any way, shape, or form. But if
No.
you look back and you trace back, you know, the use of food, we've lost all that information. That's why it's like the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. You know, we lost it. And, you know, these books are amazing because you can grow, like my husband grows a lot of the herbs. So it's in our garden. It's the things that work for us in this country. And
What I find crazy is that we all know that honey and lemon is great when you've got a sore throat. And the farmer, they know this. So you go to the shop and get some kind of medicine for colds, and it is labeled as herb and or menthol. And actually, don't do that. Just go and get some herbs and menthol. Just get the natural state. It's far better because
yeah,
we know this stuff. We know it's good for us, but we still don't trust. Just have some honey and lemon.
100%. And I mean, Catalina lives on it. She has it every morning because she has asthma, and she also gets lots of blood. She doesn't anymore. And, you know, her throat was always the thing. She was just constantly coughing. And also she has hay fever. So we've been doing this for 2 years, and it's been like a miracle cure, basically. I can't even begin to tell you how much it's helped.
Is that just taking the local
The
honey from
local
your
honey,
area?
yeah, we
Yeah.
just get local honey, you know, from the local shop, and that's every morning. She has a spoonful with some warm water, and she goes out every single day of the year. We've been doing it for a few years, and it's the simplicity of that for me that is like, it's like something that has been taken so far out of context. It's like a connection to earth, a connection to wisdom that has been turned into something that has been, you know, used against women for centuries and centuries and centuries. And, you know, I opened up the Akashic Records this morning just to see what wanted to be known about the witch wound. And I'm just going to read it. So the first thing that happened, I got a tension headache. And it was, you know, this is a dark topic. I asked, how could I bring love and lightness into something that is, you know, deeply traumatic? If you think about how many women, 4,000 women were sent to the death in Scotland, 1,000 in England, just 5 in Wales. You know, so clearly there's something going on there that was much more supportive of women. You know, and if you think about what happened at the, you know, the Salem witch trials as well, just absolutely awful. And this is something that is a wound, and we need to acknowledge that wound if we're going to feel empowered. And it was really, you know, it really is about celebration and the initiation of women back into their wisdom, back into their bodies, and back to nature. Like the word initiation, when it came out, I was like, oh, that says everything to me. Like we are being reinitiated, and to remind ourselves that we're being reinitiated, that there is pain and trauma, and that it was a wickedness that was turned towards women. And there is a sadness and a purging that's still needed for women that are alive to heal and transform into their full power, and to use their voices to heal. And that I heard you are doing it. It is happening. It will take 2 more generations. And if I think about me, so, and the generations of my daughter, Catalina, and then she already has all the eggs in her, that if she does have children, so I'm doing all this healing work. The 2 generations are her, and if she has children, her children. So that made absolute sense as I closed my records down and I came back and I thought about it, and I was like, so basically Catalina's children will be the ones that, if we continue to do this work, will really feel the full benefit, you know. And that makes sense to me. Like we can heal automatically, but the actual impact of the healing takes more time, and we've got to keep going on our paths and, you know, bringing other people with us, because as the Dalai Lama said, that it's, you know, when women heal, the rest of the world heals. And I really believe that, because I think we take people on the journey with us.
And I'm kind of speechless because that's everything that I hope for. And it is this magic that everything from the past and then where we are today and the future is all in one. all at the same time happening together, and it is beautiful. And one of my favorite authors on womanhood, I guess, is Sharon Blackie, and she's an incredible woman, for many, many reasons. But her work is absolutely about when women feel connected with nature, with the past, we can absolutely heal the future. And it's one of her books, we'll talk about in another episode, Haggitude. Love that one because it's about that inner hag and actually reclaiming the word. But she goes back into old ancient stories and how they, well, all the lessons that we can learn from that for today, so that we can then live a better future for our children and our grandchildren. So we've got a whole reading list, haven't we, for our listeners to go and explore. But Sharon Blackie is quite foundational in, I guess, it's old pagan roots. And I'm sure there are teachers, whatever your culture is, wherever you live in the world, there will be teachers who are reconnecting you back to your land. And we are both British, so we come from these shores. So the symbols and the history, the stones, the birds, the flora and fauna all around us, and that's what connects us. And I've said on many times, for me, it's getting out in nature. And, you know, if you're seeing any of the videos that we're playing, you'll see that my room is just filled with plants because I have to have the outdoors indoors. For Karen, I can see all of your beautiful flowers and birds behind you. And then, and it's about that oneness. So it doesn't matter where you are, it's feeling connected with nature, the universe, the wholeness. And that's where we really will heal the world. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. What one thing, you know, if we're going to sign off in a minute, what one thing would you say to the people, to the women listening, or the men listening, you know, what's the one piece of advice or wisdom that you would pass along?
Whatever your practice is, whether you like to cast spells, manifest things, light candles, have a bit of aromatherapy, whatever your thing is, do it intentionally. So as you're doing it, think about, what is it I'm really wanting? And you don't have to shout it out to the world. It's just you shouting it out in a whisper sometimes. But yeah, it's back to that intentionality. You can't reconnect with yourself and the universe and all around you unless you do it with purpose.
Beautiful. And I think I would just add to that, you know, get out and look at the sky, like feel your feet on the earth. You know, you're of the earth, but you're also, you know, reaching up into the sky. And it's that kind of earth and heavens, that link between the two. Like, we live in a world where we can see the sky, but we're also on the ground, you know, and just there's a marvelness to it, really. Just marvel in that. It's so simple. And yet, just look at the sky and look at your feet, and look at the sky and look at your feet, and just realize that you're here, and you're here for a reason. Yeah.
And just to add another note, if you listen to this before the bonfire night, just know that the Halloween or Samhain is usually about 3 or 4 days before Halloween and 3 or 4 days after, when the veil is at its thinnest. And even if you don't go to a big bonfire, just light one outside, just have a really small, just look at the flames, light a candle. And it really is connecting. There's something really beautiful about, you know, we know about the water elements, but there's something there about the fire elements that reawakens something within us. So if that's all you do this Halloween, you don't have to get your broomstick out and put your hat on. You can just light a candle and watch the flame flicker.
I love that. Simplicity is key, isn't it? Thank you so much to everybody for being with us today and for listening. And we really, really wish you.
Witch you, I love
wish
that.
you a wonderful, you know, turning of time as we step into this, you know, really autumn energy and the leaves falling. And it is a mysterious, wonderful time of year where it's incredibly beautiful. So yeah, we wish you a wonderful time. We'll be back next week to talk about more wonderful topics. And we just want to say, please keep on listening to us and saying it, sister.